the name wrong on the card. I got the last name right. I couldn't believe I got the first name. And then French. Suzanne Shawbonquit, that's easy. And I didn't put Shawbon next to it. So
No,
I got it right. They got it. Oh, yeah, they got it right. And Suzanne is the candidate for the New Democratic Party in Ontario. And I had the opportunity of having a chat with Ms. Martin on Friday at the restaurant.
Yeah,
so,
very good.
So we're going to each other. So we're going to be talking about climate change. And I guess where we're going to start is basically how urgent do you think the climate crisis is?
I think it's urgent for all of us. Really, it is. And none of us don't know how urgent it really is yet. And the kind of issues that and we use to mitigate. I've spent some time with corporate Canada in many areas when it came to sustainability and it came to climate change, CO2 emissions. I spent some time with Herman, as overseas Canada, believe it or not. But it was around, how do we become sustainable, but also, what do we have to do as a company or a corporation? In terms of the supply chain, how do we do that when it comes to CO2 emissions? And so it was really interesting to sit and listen to them. So it's also in my community, it's a very common discussion we have within First Nations. And our perspective and worldviews unique in some ways and how we kind of tackle it.
So how is it viewed in the First Nations?
Well, it's viewed, my philosophy and how I view it is, the earth is our mother. And in terms of how we look after her and many things that come from our mother is like in the womb. And we have to take great care, even when we offer tobacco. I remember a story being told by an elder that had this young man that wanted to learn his culture. He was very anxious and impatient and wanted to take a shortcut through the bush. And he didn't know. The elder said, "No, we're going the long way." And so they went to this bush and they pulled out this plant and it kept falling and it kept falling. And this young man wanted to know, and he said, "Fix it so it stands up straight." And he says, "Well, I can't. Put it up the ground." And the point of this was really around teachings around some of the plants and how we use, to be strong, right, and to have roots, and to understand the teachings around the environment. But he would throw the tobacco down on the ground. They just throw it, and he would answer him and say, "Would you do that to your mother?" So there's very strong connections in terms of our relationships with the land. And, there's some stigmas and barriers around misconceptions, I guess, for people that used to be called tree huggers, and, which wasn't a bad thing, but we have a lot of respect because they're living entities to us. And,
Next question I have for you is, do you think that we should be putting a price on carbon?
Putting a price on carbon? I believe that we need to absolutely, I think there's some big polluters in the world, and many in our own cities, industries that, are polluting. I believe that there's a responsibility there with our big polluters, as well as a responsibility with all of us at some point, in terms of how that's going to work in society, for sure. I think we're all responsible.
So the next question is what form of carbon pricing do you think should be put in place?
Well, as a New Democrat, we're looking, our focus is on the cap and trade and really targeting and focusing on the big polluters ultimately. That's what the focus is, and making sure that it's effective and it's efficient as well.
Do you know what the reasoning is, or the behind cap and trade with the DP?
Well, I think when you look at industry in terms of the CO2 emissions, they're the ones that are creating a lot of the challenges that we have around climate. And, and making them ultimately responsible for what they're putting out into the air, including our air, water, you name it. So, looking at, type of licensing or fees around that. Perhaps, in terms of mitigating and making them more responsible.
Isn't it basically putting the fox in charge of the hen house? Because you can game the system. What's to say or what's to prevent the industry from gaming the system?
That's a really complex question, so I don't think
What's meant to be
like
easy?
this. No, not at all, but you know what? You know, even though we're responsible as individuals, I don't know how close we are to that. I mean, we can't afford to buy solar panels. You know, as a consumer, it doesn't come down to the consumer level for us to be able to even really participate and engage. Hopefully soon. You know, and there's opportunities around other technologies too that I've been looking into for the last couple of years. I met with Zero Footprint. I don't know if any of you know who that is, in Toronto. And there was a technology that was being, that he had developed that you plug into the wall. It looked like, you know, it was multiple plugs. And he, in real time, what he did was he was showing me his office space down on Spadina around energy consumption. And it showed in real time on the screen. He'd shut off the lights. And it would show how much energy was being used and not used in that particular room. And what's really interesting is that we're not looking at other ways. And I think there's multiple vehicles that we need to be looking at.
But I think that the problem we're talking about is more than that. It's about continuously pumping more CO2 to the atmosphere. So how do we mitigate that? How do we fix that problem? And you know, a fee on carbon is obviously one way of doing it. And you said that there's no, you know, you mentioned, and of course you said there's no way for the citizens to participate. No, and there is a way for
No, there is, yeah. No, there is a way for us to participate. And, you know, and it's up to, you know, in terms of all of us, I mean, solutions are how that's going to work. I mean, there's many ways to do it. I mean, when you look at, you know, better transit system, better green spaces, you know, walking, cycling, there's a number of solutions our city is looking at. And I think we need to collaborate. I think we need to be a little more clever and innovative around some of those solutions. They don't come from the Ivory Towers, and they don't come from necessarily government. It comes from real people that are, you know, that are passionate about their spaces and their.
This is an unfair question, like, just before I ask
Go for it.
it. What do you think we have to do to convince the NDP to think otherwise, and to move away from that traditional thinking of carbon tax? Credit.
Why do we want to convince them to?
No, carbon fee.
Well, carbon fee.
I'm sorry, carbon tax.
You mean going down to the populace in terms of the individual people? I don't know. I mean, I don't know a lot about the positioning. I have to be honest with you, right? I'm a couple of weeks old when it comes to this particular area, which I'm fine with. So it's just a matter of time that I'll be able to actually articulate that formally. Right?
So, I know what words are talking, but am I hearing you say that if you got to Queen's Park, you would champion a carbon?
That's not what I said.
What did you say?
I didn't say you're waiting for me to say something.
So,
We are focused on the cap and trade.
so that is,
Democrats.
so that's what you would champion.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's other ways and other alternatives we're even looking at on top of that in terms of mitigating and looking at other solutions as well. I don't think it's the be all end all personally. I think there's other ways that we could be looking at this in terms of, you know, solutions around this challenge. I think we're all challenged with it. It's a great opportunity.
How many towers have you? Okay.
It is run out of time, but we have extra time because Andrew is not here.
So I have one more question then.
What question? We may need to go actually, so.
I just would like, any last comments before we leave the queue?
Nothing, but you're very passionate, and I totally respect that. I do. And, yeah, I think we're gonna have many views of how we can tackle this and make solutions, and hopefully we can bring those voices together, like we are today.
Thank you much.
I just want to say that's the embodiment of what we wanted to do. You did it perfectly. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. You have
Great discussion.
You have children in your life? There you go. And this is the public facing option.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, we actually gave an order to the
Okay.
evening,
Yeah.
and I sent it out to
Oh.
the candidates. So
Jean.
next would have been Andrew, and as I'll say it on the microphone so we can document this accurately. So Andrew Olivier sent us a press about an hour ago, so I apologize for him not being here. And I will be. So our next candidate is Jean-Louis.
I thought you ran away. Welcome. How are you?
I can always be better, I guess.
It's a nice brisk day out there. Thank you very much for coming this evening. Appreciate it. And this is Raymond, and he's running as an independent.
Not really as an independent, it's for the party. It's a populist party out of Toronto. It's by, I guess, 10 years ago by Kevin Clark. He was a homeless person, and he's, I guess, kind of a social activist, socialist individual for the homeless, the disabled, and the disadvantaged, and it's just to bring out their voice for the people.
Just out of curiosity, how many candidates are running under that banner?
Well, I think the last time there was, I believe, 4. Okay. It's kind of a free.
That's good. That's good. But fantastic you're running. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
I think that anybody who puts themselves out there deserves thanks.
Well, it's just a voice for the poor, just to be heard.
So what is that the same with you? I mean, you're obviously aware of our passion for carbon pricing.
Yes, exactly.
Where do you stand? How important is climate change? How serious do you think climate change is?
To me, it's almost as important to me as the disparity that's going on between the rich and the poor in this society. It has the same effect on me, because if we're going to go on, if we're going to lose this planet, I mean, the problem is right now, there are probably about 1 billion people that are starving, probably thirsty, probably 4 billion living on less than a couple dollars a day in deplorable, unsanitary conditions, and probably a couple billions of us that are probably living a good life, but we are probably massacring our environment. And if we don't do anything about it, we're going to put the survival of the human species at risk. And just for the 10 million or so that just want to skim off, the so-called 95% of the world's assets, and they don't want to share with no one, just like us in the middle class. We don't seem to want to share with anybody else. And I'm quite passionate about that. We should be. This is our only terrestrial paradise. This is our Earth, and we have to share.
So when it comes to carbon pricing,
to me, I'm more of for carbon tax, but incremental tax. We have to put it on our biggest polluters, and then we vote it down a kind of an incremental tax system. Like same thing like it would be for that applies to the biggest polluters, and also for the gasoline.
so who are the biggest polluters in your mind?
It would be definitely the oil and the gas industries. That would be the mining industries, and we'll break down the line. And we'd rather that subsidize our public transit with it, so we could take like the vehicles off the road, especially the congestion that's going on, like cities in Ontario or something like this. So it would help for the, I guess, for the clean air or something.
So you're talking about a system of taxation then?
It is a system of taxation, exactly.
So it's revenue for the government?
It is. I believe it definitely we need it, because we can't so far go for the rich. What we need for a billionaire for, like I said, I love millionaires that pay their fair share of taxes. but I don't need a billion-dollar corporation that wants to become a multi-billion-dollar corporation with our government subsidies. That's what's happening right now.
So do you see any problems with what we are proposing, which is a carbon fee dividend, where we are putting a fee on carbon?
Yeah.
Charged to the highest polluters, and that fee is returned back to individuals.
To me, that sounds a bit, like, I have no problem with that, but to me, it sounds a little bit like the conservative, where, you know, when they're doing their child tax credit, and they give it in the hands of the people. Well, the problem is that what are the people going to spend it? To me, it's best when it's given, like, for public transit or something, then you direct it for something that's really needed, and that would be.
So do you feel, and just pursue that for a second. So the public transit bodies are coming into the government hands. Where is that money going to be spent? Will it be spent in the Zilda?
You mean? To me, that is a hazard willing to happen. The problem is, it's like the Lapidot tragedy. The problem there is that they have hazardous goods through town, and it's and it's going along Ramsey Lake. And the problem is, it wouldn't take much for some of that train, let's say some of the oils, they're still traveling in those .3 tank cars. And they had a spill was it a few years ago, about 20 miles from here or something like this, the Canadian Pacific Railway. And and like I said, and that is one of our drinking water sources, Ramsey Lake, and it's one of our beautiful lakes here in town.
No, we've, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's just present, and CP told us so. I want to thank you very much. Yeah. Wish you luck, and thank you very much. Fred is
Yeah, he said, so we just need a moment to set up the video camera up there. So, and we'll make sure it's all lined up. And this one will allow us to play.
So am I putting that one here, or you're just using this one?
I'll need volume. Okay. Okay, so it'll just be a second. Is there volume on here? And I'm gonna put this.
We're seeing a bit of it. Oh, just-
Yeah, yeah. I just do a sound check.
Sorry, 1 second.
Thanks, everybody.
We spent better part of Friday and we've been yesterday afternoon in Sudbury. We were trying to get things going with the IT people at the University of Toronto and with our group people to live stream the event tonight. And what a pain it was to get it done. All changed the sessions we had today. We couldn't bring in our own wireless. We couldn't use our high definition cameras. That was part of the decision.
Okay, we'll start it from the beginning.
I'll start it again. I'll start it.
Yeah, I just gotta make sure the camera's on it, ready.
Yeah, so we're okay, can we, you know.
Okay, I want to talk about what all the other politicians in this,
Can everybody hear it?
Yeah,
almost every politician.
I don't have the camera on it. Jerry,
I'm gonna talk
Okay,
about
can you maybe do that
carbon
first?
feeding.
yeah, it's on the,
Thank you for your patience.
yes, thanks, everyone. There, it's on. There. We're going to do a proper introduction. This is Dr. Dave Robinson with the Green Party of Canada.
He's also a candidate for Sudbury.
the Green Party of Ontario, and he's the candidate for Sudbury, and he is speaking in this video here because he's in Toronto right now at the debate in Toronto. Okay, so here we go. Thanks everyone for your patience.
I want to talk about what all the other politicians in this election, almost every politician in Canada is afraid to talk about. I'm going to talk about the carbon feeding dividend. And you know, I know, but everybody else is afraid to talk about it. I'm not though, because for one thing I understand it. I'm an economist and I've taught this stuff in classes. So let me explain why you really want a carbon feeding dividend system. You want it because you want to save lives. That's what we're doing. You want it because it'll create jobs. And you want it because you're going to get a check. So let's start with some of you. I'm pretty relief. People shouldn't throw garbage in the park. It sounds pretty obvious, doesn't it? So when you give people money for throwing garbage in the park, well, that would actually make the situation worse. Well, that's what we do with the carbon. We actually subsidize the companies that are digging up fossil carbon and selling it to us to burn. So you've been getting a free ride, cheap carbon, and we're burning it. You're making the world worse off. And you know that the climate is actually not just getting warmer. You know, it could be approaching one of those tipping points. It'll be a disaster for all of us. there are people who think we're heading for extinction. I don't think that, but it's serious enough to take into account. We have to start turning the Titanic away from the iceberg. So if you wanted to stop people from the garbage in the park, what you do is you start to fund them. You just put a little tax, a big tax, on garbage in the park. Now that's the principle of garbage tax. Instead of subsidizing bad things, we're going to just increase the price of it. This has been done, for instance, in BC, where they're now charging about $30 per ton of carbon release. What they do is they just charge it at the gas tank, or rather, at the company that delivers the gas. You never see it, it just appears as part of the price of the gas. It appears as part of the price of the coal, it appears as part of the price of the natural gas. Really easy to collect because there's only a few big pipes bringing that stuff into the province. Cheap to collect, efficient, fair, everybody gets treated the same way. But the price of gas is a little bit higher. And then what we do is we collect that money and give it back. That's the dividend part. So suddenly we are making it less attractive to throw garbage in the park. And we're making it more attractive to pick up garbage or find ways to avoid producing garbage. That's the carbon tax. It actually makes other things cheaper. But we're going to give you the money back, and it's $1,000 a year at the current level in BC, and we have to get to that level. I think something else really nice about this carbon fee and dividend scheme, that as the price goes up, and it has to go up to $100 or $200 a ton, if we're going to stop the momentum, if we're going to turn it back in, I guess I'd like to say. Your check goes up. The businesses that are developing other ways to produce energy or ways to make your house more efficient, ways to insulate more effectively, better furnaces, all of those companies find that they've got a lot more business, so the technology improves, there's more renovations. There are jobs in producing biofuels. There are even more jobs in Sudbury here. There are jobs in producing geothermal energy, where we have huge advantage over everybody else. So what I'm saying here is a carbon tax helps us save the world from a climate crisis, and it certainly starts saving lives, save lives. It produces jobs because an economic transition like this always produces jobs. You get people who argue that when you bring in a carbon tax, you hurt an industry. My gosh, you'll hurt the oil industry. Yes, and you'll help other ones, and so it balances out. You don't have to worry about hurting the industries with the tax. The neat thing is you get this technological surge that creates even more jobs. The third thing about it is the best way to run this is just to give the money back to people so they can spend it again. That actually, you know what that does? That stimulates the economy and creates even more jobs. So the carbon tax creates jobs, and the dividend creates jobs, and that's what we want. The two places you can feel this is on your heating bill and your gas bill. Some other prices will go up, some other prices go down, but those are the big ones. So what's going to happen is the oil company and gas companies are going to pay money to the government for each ton of carbon that will be produced by what they sell. They pay it to the government. Well, in a sense, that's up to you. That's a political question. We economists say, well, you should spend it on the most productive thing, right? But politically, the smart thing to do is give it to people. We want to give it to the people we've taken it away from. Then they aren't worse off. As soon as you start giving it back with a check, what kind of a check? How about a monthly check? If it were a monthly check, you get a $100 check every month. Think of what that does for poor families. If it were an annual check, you get $1,000, maybe $1,200. It sort of depends on the calculation. The thing to notice is the check is actually bigger than the amount that you pay for extra for your gas and your heating. Why is it bigger? Because we're not giving a check back to the companies, we're not giving a check back to the government offices, we're giving it all back to the people. So you get a check that's actually more than you're gonna get in for. And the result is you're gonna spend that on various things, and that's gonna create more jobs. You're gonna have a better life, and a whole bunch of problems go away.
That's the second. So, Fred Twilley, we'll be talking with Gerry. Just let me get this set up before you guys start, okay? You guys look great.
To speak about the application.
Yes,
It's not quite that. Oh, you gotta think backwards. There. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fred Twilley.
yes,
Welcome.
thank you.
How are you?
Oh, I adequately represent David,
And the Green Party.
yeah, and the Green Party. I've run for the Green Party before. And as he talked about, he called it a tax. It is really a carbon fee dividend system.
Everybody who does that fee tax,
Yeah.
they're all.
He's an economist, and even though it's called a fee, it in effect is a tax on carbon. But it circulates, to say.
Well, let's take a step back first of all. How serious is this climate change crisis in your mind?
I believe I'm a geologist. I believe it's the most critical problem facing mankind today. And I believe if we went carbon neutral tomorrow, the problems would get worse for possibly centuries. So this is very serious. And no matter how you believe how serious it is, the sooner we start, the better it is. And so we need a system that works immediately. We need a system that affects the whole economy. The cap and trade system only affects those companies. Regulations, if you went by a regulation method, that would only affect those companies that have regulations imposed on them.
So you see it's the most serious problems affecting mankind at this point in time.
Yes.
And it only worse regardless of what we do, even if we went to zero today. And I understand that. So how much does what's Canada's role on this?
Well, Canada pollutes.
Well, actually, from a pollution standpoint, don't talk about it.
Excuse me. Canada produces 4 times per capita the amount of carbon that the average farmer. We have the technologies and the abilities and the resources that we don't need to do that. So if we stand here and say, well, we're not going to do anything until China does something, or India or any other country, we're saying, well, you have to slow down the rate that you pull your poor out of poverty, but we sit back and enjoy our comfortable ways. No, Canada should be leading. If we want other countries to follow us, we've got to say to them, look, we're going to act unilaterally. Because we believe this problem is so serious, we're going to act unilaterally on our own.
So we've heard David speak, and David is obviously a fee and dividend guy.
Yes.
Why do you think that's the way to go?
So,
What does your party think?
okay, one, it affects the whole economy. Cap and trade does not. Regulations do not. 2, it is a separate revenue stream, and so it's very easy to monitor, so people can make sure. It is very immediate, and as David says, you get a multiplier effect. People spend the money, that creates jobs. So it's the most efficient, most flexible. If you had a tax system, that's not bad because it affects the whole economy. But you're trying to give relief in income tax, you have to change the rules every time you adjust the amount of the carbon tax. Whereas it's automatic. Just as you said, well, this is how much money came in. That's how much we put out, less of small administration.
But Dr. Hansen, I was reading an article from him this week, states that if you look at parties, I mean, this is really a policy, or the fee dividend is really a policy that conservatives should embrace.
Yes.
And the reason for that, of course, is because it's not a tax. They pay taxes.
Well, not only that, but it works on the incentive system. I mean, capitalism is, the idea is the opportunity, you go ahead and you work hard to improve your lot. Well, if you change, if we start paying the full price of carbon, then we're going to use less carbon. And the people who work the hardest are going to benefit the most.
So this is almost probably the best example of participatory democracy.
Yes.
I'm going to get money back.
Yes.
And I see the results of what the government has done.
Yeah.
What do you think the effect would be on the economy?
Oh, I think it would create jobs.
What kind of jobs?
Well, initially, jobs like, jobs for people retrofit their houses to make them more efficient. Jobs created because people buy more fuel-efficient equipment. So there's salesman's jobs, there's manufacturing jobs.
So what about the creativity part? We are saying the price of carbon, the price of oil, and things going to go. Those companies have to do something to reduce the cost. What's going to come back to replace oil when it comes to transportation? And what's going to happen? What kind of technology can we expect out of this?
Well, I think the most obvious is electric cars, and they're improving quite dramatically. And more fuel-efficient vehicles. And if we could previously talked about our train system, electric trains, it could easily replace a diesel. And if we had a relatively efficient, even moderate speed, not even a high speed system between here in Toronto, it might take us the same time to get here.
I would never drive it, you know that.
Yeah, but supposing it takes 6 hours to take a train to Toronto instead of 5 with driving and stops for food and whatnot. While you're on that train, you can utilize that time either to do business, to do self-entertainment, and enjoy yourself. You can rest, you can catch up in your sleep. So effectively, it costs you a lot less of your time.
Do you think of any other innovations that would come out of being forced to do something?
Well, I think as you mentioned, geothermal energy, there are projects on the books, as far as I know, talking to an energy analyst, that actually have a higher rate of return than the core business of some companies here. But because of a difficulty getting enough capital, they don't invest in them. And so if the price goes up for carbon, then maybe a lot of these innovations will become more economic.
That's an opinion question. This question is, the clean energy sector is now $11.3 billion in Canada. It's a huge number. Yet it's not on the government's radar. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think they seem to be just sort of just absorbed by the oil industry. And it was an easy way to move ahead when oil prices were good. But and nobody foresaw this drop in oil prices. So this unforeseen thing has proved to us that we can't put all our eggs in the oil basket, as a company said.
And I was listening to someone As It Happens last night stating that the Arabs could do this for a number of years, not just a number of months, to keep the price down, and that they are actually targeting the Canadian tar sands.
Yes, targeting that and targeting fracking, which is also expensive. They want to put out of business the higher priced oil things, which
anybody could compete because our oil is starting to show up in Europe, and we're the largest exporters to the US now too. So, but thank you very much. Any last comments before we finish this off?
We've got to do this. I mean, I express things very pessimistically about if we became carbon neutral tomorrow, we'd problems. But I do believe that every effort we make to reduce carbon emissions is going to save lives in the long run. And I think
which was David's message when he started. We do this to save lives.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. No, Glenn doesn't have a video. Yeah, I have something to read from them. And then okay, if you just put the phone up so I know how much time we have, because I wanted to make sure we have time for gratitude at the end. Okay, so Glenn Thibeault can't be here tonight because it's the Liberal AGM for the local riding association, and he sent his regrets. So he was asked the same questions as the others, and it's how urgent is the climate crisis, and what carbon pricing policy would they champion at Queen's Park and why? This is Glenn's answer. I believe that as a province, it's important that we continue to fight climate change. Ontario is a North American leader when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. By eliminating coal, Ontario was able to save $4.4 billion in health and environmental costs and take 7 million vehicles off the road. I believe that further action on climate change is needed, but that it must keep Ontario and the North competitive. I look forward to working with the Premier in the continued fight against climate change. So, that's Glenn's answer. Yeah, it was good stuff. It was good stuff from everybody tonight, Gerry.
Yeah, I called Paula's office this afternoon in the office and gave me a chance to submit something in writing as well. They thought they had submitted something to us, but they actually submitted to Clean, I forget what it's called, one of the organizations in Toronto. And it talked about carbon price. It said, well, we don't want more tax, we don't want more tax, we have to balance the books. It's not a matter of balancing the books, it's a matter of saving lives. This has nothing to do with taxes or balancing the province books. We're looking at a fee that's returned to the citizens. That is not going to help the government balance its books. It needs to balance its books somewhere else to do another way. And I think I finally got them. I've got to send them some material, by the way. And I told that if Vic Fidelli wanted you and I, we'll have a long, long chat with him.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's what we do. We don't give up. We're the people that just don't go away. We're building relationships.
Yeah, we're waiting for that, Rash.
So we have spare time now. We have maybe about 5 to 10 minutes to talk, and then we can have a washroom break and then watch the live feed from Toronto. So I was wondering if you had any questions of us. Yes, Sean.
Yes. What does you guys ever think about? Let's say do like what we did here in Ontario, like shut down the coal industry. Here in Canada, shut down the tar sand industry. When you think that would be contribute to because that is dirty oil.
Oh, yeah. No, it's ethical.
Can I tell you a big secret that shouldn't go out on the internet?
Yeah.
It's out there.
The 2010 MIT paper published found that with caps on carbon emissions worldwide, the tar sands is economically non-viable through to 2050, even with carbon capture and sequestration.
Yeah, because we're using like natural gas, I think, to flush out the tar sands into the bitumen.
Yeah.
That is.
And we run a lot of water too, so lots of water.
Okay.
I know a little bit.
Question here?
Like British Columbia, from what I gather,
Yeah.
instituted, right, this carbon tax for what, 5 years now?
Yes.
6 years?
Yes.
And from what I hear, it's successful.
Yes.
So why is it that we don't hear more about, that, and it actually is working? And why isn't that sort of, tending to have these politicians rethink this, Like, why aren't they adapting this, this particular type of thing that we see as instituted?
Well, the Sudbury Star and the Northern Light publish a lot of our stuff. They're very gracious, so please do subscribe to them. As well, the CBC is often airing our comments, so please listen to them. And the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star are actually their editorial stance is very.
No, that's not my
No, that's
question.
not the
I'm
question.
laying blame.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't it influencing
Oh, why?
the politicians that we have here in Ontario?
The first question is, the first thing is that conservatives believe that anything that's in charge of industry is a tax, and they're against taxes. The liberals think that if they tax, then it'll bring more. They want tax. They want to bring them because they want to spend more. So, and then there's this cap and trade, which is everybody's touting because great, and credits and everything else. But once again, that's controlled by the market, and anything that's controlled by the market can be gained, as we saw with the financial crisis a few years ago. So this is the only idea that's not there, is because it was not politically thought of, because it doesn't come from them. It takes a long time for them to wrap their minds around something that's totally benign. Like, this is benign, but we're not getting the press. We're not getting the press for it, and because it's not sexy. It was sexy when Australia canceled theirs. Okay, that was sexy. I mean, the papers everywhere. But the fact that it's working really well, BC is not doing that, and that's how they're influenced. They're influenced by the paper, by everything we read as well. So it's very, very difficult. Did anyone want that?
Yeah, the BC, when they instituted theirs, and it's something Dave Robinson echoed, and you actually said it yourself, that it should be fair across the board. And what BC, when they first came out, the Suzuki Foundation suggested that it be fair, and they've had to modify it so that rural areas and agricultural actually get a larger dividend. And I think that we need to recognize that if you do it straight across the board, a check for everybody, then it's not going to be equitable for people in the north who have to travel farther for work, farther for healthcare. And then maybe we need to include something where somebody who has the big boat on Lake Nipissing pays more than the person who's driving to take their family, to healthcare in Sudbury from Manitowoc.
And I think
And it makes it more complex. I agree, it makes it more complex. But there's ways. Mexico has a way when you buy a luxury vehicle or a luxury thing, you pay for the carbon it's going to produce ahead of time. There are mechanisms in place that can be stacked on top of the carbon fee.
Yeah, what we're proposing is one method that can be there's a change to suit this country's necessity. But we don't want to be a tax. We don't want to be something that the government's going to keep and do something with or do nothing with. We want it to serve back to the citizens. Because if we're all participating, we're getting a check. We're going to make sure that these companies not polluting, so our check will increase too.
So, but think of the impact on urbanization. It's going to be more, your check is going to be worth more if you're living in a city where you have access to public transit, or you live in Windsor.
I agree with you.
Where your degree days are considerably less than they are in person. All those things we have to look at the equity.
Equitability, yeah. Fred, you have that something?
Well, try to answer his question. Look how long it took people to accept the smoking cost cancer. I mean, this is the thing. It's very. They just are so slow to get to it.
But this is something that's working, and it's here in Canada.
Yeah, he's
What you're talking about is tweaking. We need to tweak it. But
look, they had radial tires prove themselves in Europe for decades before they were adopted in North America. They were proven that beyond a shadow of a doubt they were superior.
granted,
That's
that's
what's happening.
I'm not.
I'm sorry.
Would it not be better, rather than giving the money back, to take that money and invest it in more green energy projects, like, for instance, methane from the garbage places, or methane production, or heat from underground? Would it not be better to spend money on?
I think we'd have the money there because all of a sudden we'd stop subsidies to the owners who could actually take those subsidies and put them somewhere else. Because that's one of the biggest problems. We train people for the all batch. We give them subsidies to drill, and they get to keep on all but 13% of the money they take out. So there's a huge subsidy that's happening there.
There's a huge reason why to keep it revenue neutral and not a tax grab. We have to ramp up the price of carbon. And in order to do that and keep it politically saleable, the people are going to need to see the money. Additionally, by making it not revenue neutral, it can actually slow down the GDP. By giving the money back to the people, they're going to spend it, so that's going to grow the GDP. By making it predictable and incrementally increasing, that will allow the market to correct itself. The government should not be in the place of picking favorites because they pit the provinces against each other.
So
I'm sorry,
Maybe Henderfield.
you're coming first, and then back there.
This is really simple, maybe for him, but not for me. If you say to the worst polluters of carbon, you say to them, okay, we're going to tax you so much for this, then what they're going to do is they're going to raise their price, and then the consumers, they're going to be charged more. So and that's to me simple economics. I don't understand how the little guys are going to benefit.
Get more money back.
I have a question that's related to that. That's right.
How does the little guy benefit?
Yeah.
Because 2/3 of Canadians produce less than average carbon in their consumer. The amount that you will pay in fees embedded into the cost of everything that has carbon in it will be less than how much dividends you get back. The top 1% of Canadians produce 6 times as much carbon pollution as the bottom 10%. The bottom 20% of earners will actually get a check 150% back greater than what they paid in carbon fees. So it actually.
The top 1 or 2% of guys actually less.
But those are the people in Toronto living downtown Toronto.
Yeah.
But
I mean, yeah.
Isn't there a danger that if you give the spoils of the carbon pricing back to the people, that you now allow the people to sort of generate a subsidy to buy fuel? Because now the fuel's going to be higher because companies are going to be charged more. So now they're getting all this revenue back, all this afford to buy fuel. They can afford to put more fuel in their tank. It just exacerbates the situation. Like I sort of agree with this idea of putting money back, like Mr. Audet said, put it into things like public transit, and make sure it doesn't just get back into the cycle again, where we subsidize fuel. Isn't that a sense of what could be happening?
The BC carbon tax experience proved otherwise. Their greenhouse gas emissions went down and their GDP grew. There as well, the Citizens Climate Lobby, a regional economic modeling Inc. They're an independent economic modeling organization to do a study on the impact of carbon fee and dividend on the U.S. economy, and showed very well that it will decrease greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, if that's in fact what happened, and if it can happen here, that's great. I mean, we have to start. We have to do something.
We do have to do something.
We have very quick Gordon.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to try to answer 2 of those things that were brought up here with a very different perspective.
You've got like 45 seconds.
That's going to shock you. One of the advantages of distributing the checks out to the common everyday citizen voter is that it allows them to buy into the system. Because one of the challenges we have in our democratic system is voter participation. The poorer you are, the less likely you are to vote, and yet the less income you make, the better your benefit is in this kind of system. So unless you can dangle in front of somebody an actual tangible, I'm going to get $100 back a month. It may sound crude and crass, but you're looking at 30% of the population that will respond to that. And that's the crucial 30% needing to shift to buy into the system. You know what, 30 years ago, most of us growing up as teenagers probably never thought of people getting drunk, getting in our car and driving home from a party and laughing about it next Monday morning in high school. Our public attitude was, hey, let's be brave and let's be tough, and we're going to drink and drive. And yet, you know what? It's been a concerted public effort to educate the population to the benefits, as well as what is the tax that we now put on drunk driving. You lose your license, you lose for, what is it, 3, you get criminally charged, and you know what? We've made it uncool.
You can't negotiate.
So what is interesting is that in order for us to win over, the reason why BC's tax system, with the carbon tax system, is not adopted by federal government, because the Conservatives don't like the fact that the Liberals came up with an idea. But if you have public pressure on it, well, they are, but it's because there's an ideological separation there. They don't want to admit that somebody else came up with an idea.
One last comment, Mr. Audet.
Give you last word. Yes, when you guys were referring to you don't like the government to intercede into the market system. The problem is, the market system may be the problem here.
That's why we don't want it in the market system. We don't want the solution to the market system. So we don't want a fee and a tax and did that
You get it.
no tax.
Tax and rebate.
We don't want that because every kind of credits and everything else.
I'll give you an example. If you remember I don't know if they had something on the CBC, was it last year or something, of the electric car that was developed in California in the 1990s. Well, because of the oil and gas industry, it disappeared. Well, that's what is happening right now, where they say, the oil industry is manipulating the facts and everything. There's no climate change, there's nothing. There's climate naysayers.
Well, you always have those. We're not worried about them anymore. Anyways, we have to move on, unfortunately. Thank you very much. I love the passion. This is good.
Yes.
This is a good discussion.
Thank you so much.
We have a discussion
Thanks, Gerry. Okay, so we can switch that up. And this is for Fred or whoever you want. And here, just